were you able to sneak into anything that DC didn't know about?
Oh, yeah. There's a couple things. Well, eventually, the problem is these things show up on national television, so eventually they find out. But
Yeah, but by then it's
there,
done.
let's put it this way: there were a couple of Easter eggs that were fell into the easier to get forgiveness than beg for permission category.
Hey guys, welcome back to ScreenCrush, crossover universe. I'm with my favorite person in the world, Ryan Airy.
And I am here with my co-host and favorite person ever in the world, Heather Antos.
Uh,
Hi, Heather. It's good to see you
Good
today.
to see you. I thought you were going to say Doug, the manager.
I Doug, when you work for somebody, it makes the relationship awkward.
It's
That's all
true.
I'll say.
That is true.
It's I can't believe this month. I don't know why in July the studios do this to us. Not only do you have Comic-Con, I
Hmm.
can't go to Comic-Con. There's too much going on. I'm not sure when we're posting this in relation to things, but and I know you haven't seen it yet, but I just saw
You
Superman.
did.
And spoilers, spoiler free,
Oh
and that's what you
man,
get from me on that.
I
Yeah.
get to see it tomorrow, so I'm very pumped. I'm very excited.
I did have to go into it knowing everything though,
Mm.
because we started the ending explained a few days before, and a friend of mine had already seen a screening, and I was like, "Hey, buddy." So he gave me and our writer and editor the skinny on it. So I knew everything. But the thing I realized this about spoilers though. Even if you know everything, every detail, it cannot replace the experience of actually getting to see the movie. Seeing how cool the visual effects are, the nuances of like Corrin Sweat's performance and Rachel Brosnahan and their chemistry. There's things about the movie that it doesn't matter if you know, because if you read comics, you kind of know
Yeah.
like what it's based on,
No, and I think one of my favorite things too, because getting to see how the sausage gets made for a lot of different franchises and a lot of different movies, TV shows. One of my favorite things when I get to go see a screening of something is to see how everyone else gets to watch it for the first time.
Yeah.
I'll never forget getting to go to the premiere of Force Awakens, and then going to screenings, on opening night
Oh, I bet that was
and
fun.
getting to watch everyone else see that movie for the first time. One of the most joyous experiences I've ever had.
How was the audience? Like, I guess when Han Solo probably he has the best hero entrance in that
Mhm.
movie. I
Yeah.
imagine he got the biggest, yeah.
Oh, he got the biggest yell, but my favorite will always be at the very end. Spoilers if you haven't seen The Force Awakens. I don't know, that movie's been out 10 years. But when they see Luke, right? They climb up the hill and,
Right,
and
right,
they say
right.
Luke, and he takes off his hood and he turns around, and this little kid who's sitting like right
Oh,
in
you're gonna
front of
make me
us
cry.
goes, "He has a beard now." And I will never forget it. It was one of my favorite moments.
Oh, man, just getting that childlike wonder out of somebody. Because especially when you do it professionally, we have this filter. I had a weird thing with that movie where, my brother-in-law is a video game designer.
Mhm.
He worked on The Last of Us 2, he's doing the Naughty Dog's next game, and he was working on this game for a long time that Mark Hamill did mocap him, that he was a
Oh,
character.
that's so
He
fun.
directed Mark Hamill and Gary Oldman, all the stuff for this game.
Crazy.
So they had dinner and they as a thing, they showed them some Lucasfilm stuff. Not Mark Hamill, I think like Lucasfilm did it. And they showed them before the trailer was even out footage of Force Awakens. And I
Ah,
asked my brother-in-law, "How's Luke? Is Luke okay?
yeah.
I have to know that Luke I was so
Is
worried
he
about Luke
okay?
Skywalker. Is he all right?" And then he's like, "Yeah, Luke was in it." And I was like, "Oh, good." And I saw the movie and I was like, "Fuck is
Where is
he's
he?
he's in 2 seconds at the end?"
Uh,
So I had a I went in with a different set of expectations for the movie than that incredibly wonderful child that
uh,
you saw
the
that was in
the
front of you.
the great ties of, what is it? Uh, Force Awakens and the most recent Captain America movie, only Red Hulk, only in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, but spoiled in the trailer.
But
But that's the
spoiled
thing,
in the
that's the
trailer.
problem too, when you're a comic person, yeah.
Yeah.
Why are you gonna put Thunderbolt Ross in the movie if he's not gonna be Red Hulk? Or for instance, right, you were talking about seeing a movie at a screening and then seeing it with the audience. When I saw Infinity War at a screening, I was like, okay, yeah, they did the snap, makes sense. So I could not wait to see it in theaters,
Oh,
man.
yeah.
And to hear, like, literally the air go out of the room with people, that was amazing.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite movie experiences, just to mess with people.
Oh, I love that, I love that. Another one of my favorite movie experiences, well, just anytime I saw a Marvel screening with Chris Claremont, because that is a man who
Oh,
loves to
man.
talk during a movie.
It
Um,
doesn't surprise me because he loves to talk in between movies too.
he does, and I can't remember which movie it was, but there was one where he was seated right behind me and just the whole film, either him cackling or, "Well, that's not how I did it." Uh,
I should say too, I love Chris Claremont,
oh,
right?
he's great.
Obviously he's a genius, etc. But I've met him in person. We've interviewed him a couple times. He just is. He's a
He's a
verbose
talker.
guy.
Yeah.
He writes verbose, like, I remember him telling the story about when he did the Wolverine book with Frank Miller. And he said that Frank deliberately drew, as a lot of artists do, left him a lot of space on the
Mhm.
page to put his bubbles in, but he got Frank Miller's art when Wolverine's fighting the head of the Yakuza at the end. And basically, Wolverine wins the fight, but he loses because he proved that Wolverine was an animal. And Claremont was like, I couldn't put words on that.
Yeah.
It was just beautiful. So we ended up with this entire page, 2 or 3 pages, like it was like the Snake Eyes silent issue,
Ah,
like where he just let the action play out.
yeah.
So he does have restraint
He does have
occasionally,
restraint. He does, he
but
does.
talking during a movie, that's the to quote Firefly, that's the special circle of hell, res- reserved for people who talk at the theater.
Oh, man. Well, speaking of someone who's put many things in theater, should we introduce our guest?
You know what, Heather? You know so many people, and I cannot believe we're about to talk to this guy. I'm starstruck. I really am. I'm in awe of this. So, yes, by all means.
All right. Well, today we are talking to the one, the only Marc Guggenheim. Marc Guggenheim is an award-winning writer who has written for multiple mediums, including television, film, video games, comic books, and more. His work includes projects such as one of the Percy Jackson films. He's worked on Star Wars, Call of Duty, Star Trek, Planet of the Apes, and most importantly, co-writer of the Green Lantern movie and co-creator of the Arrowverse. Marc Guggenheim, how the heck are you?
Marc
I'm
Guggenheim.
great. How could I not be great with such a wonderful introduction? You guys have made me feel so good about myself.
Well,
We had
good.
to
I'm gonna
shorten it.
cancel
We
therapy
could
this
have
week.
we could have made that introduction 8 times longer. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's really great to see you both.
Mark, I have to before we get into, like, everything, I just have to, like, personally I know I've told you this in person, but I have to personally thank you for inadvertently being the reason I work in comic books. I've told you this before. The Green Lantern movie is the film. I know has some polarizing views, but that is the movie that made me start reading superhero comic books. They announced that film. I really didn't know anything about Green Lantern, and for whatever reason, I decided, despite all the Marvel films that had been out, despite all the Batman films that had come out, the Green Lantern film was the one that made me go to the comic shop, pick up, Emerald Dawn, pick up Secret Origins, and I just became a hardcore Green Lantern film fan leading up to that film. And Green Lantern comics are still to this day. I have more Green Lantern comics than any other comics. So it's
So
all your
sweet.
fault.
Well, thank you. By the way, I've heard that phrase, "It's all your fault," a lot in connection with Green Lantern over the years. So that tracks. It tracks.
uh
You've also stolen several hours of my life with the Arrowverse, which I thank you for so
Well,
much.
thank
I
you. Thank you.
can't
Yeah,
believe
I've
we're
got
talking
them
to you right
actually.
now.
I have them in my attic if you
Oh,
want them
keep
back.
them. I wasn't gonna do
Um,
anything with
okay.
them anyways. That was just
Okay.
Tetris and phone time. All yours.
so before we get into the nitty-gritty of, all the odds and bits and bobbles of your career, I have to ask the burning question that has to be on everyone's mind, which is how the heck does a lawyer become a TV and film writer?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, like, I used to be a litigator,
Yeah.
so, I kind of like to say that actually the only job you can get as a litigator, that's not litigation is as a TV or film writer. No one wants to hire you to do anything else, trust me. Like I tried. But the way it happened, the super short version is that I'm the oldest of three brothers. All of us are screenwriters. My brother Eric, the middle brother, he was in film school when I was in my last year of law school, and he basically asked if I would write a script with him. And I really got bit by the bug. And I just was like, went into practice. I was practicing for like 5 years, and on the side, I was, honing my craft and practicing and trying different scripts and stuff. And I basically got to this point where I was like, you know what? If I'm going to do this, if I'm going to try to be a professional writer, I've got to do it now before I have away 3 kids and a mortgage. And I quit my job and I scheduled my move out west to coincide with staffing season. There was a period of time, believe it or not, back when, back before, way before streaming, where, for like 2 months out of the year, that's when shows would
Yeah.
staff up.
Yeah, staffing,
And
pilot season, all of the good old
yeah,
days.
it's all the good old days where there was like, where there was clarity
Yeah.
and where there was like a procedure. It was very nice. It was lovely. And yeah, and I got very lucky. I ended up getting hired on a show called The Practice, which
Woohoo.
was created by David Kelly, who did Big Little Lies and Ally McBeal and Presumed Innocent. And he was looking to hire first year writers who used to be lawyers. And I also happened to have spent the previous 5 years practicing in the jurisdiction where the show took place. So the answer, the really short answer to your question, how does a lawyer become a writer, is in an incredible amount of luck, an incredible amount of right place, right
I
time.
love that you started all of this by saying, "In my free time as a lawyer, as a litigator," because
Right.
I imagine there's just loads of that.
It's funny. So I really struggled with finding time to write,
Mhm.
because I found like I was exhausted by the end of the day and my brain just wouldn't work. And I would say I wrote over the weekends, but that would mean having weekends off, which was not the case as a lawyer. But then I actually read an interview with a writer named Ron Bass, who actually like wrote like all the movies in the 90s.
Yeah.
Like, and he used to be a former lawyer, and he was saying that before he broke in, he would wake up at 5 in the morning every
Oh my
morning and
gosh.
write. And I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna do that."
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I wrote from 5 to 7, each day, at least 2 hours, and, it was brutal waking up that early and stuff, but it was the only time I could really write.
Can I ask, when you were doing that, honing your craft and everything, I assumed you were writing spec scripts for
I
shows.
was. I was.
What shows were you, when was this and what shows were you writing spec scripts for? And were any of them Simon and Simon?
None of them were Simon Simon. The funny thing is, believe it or not, like, it started out, my brother and I, we wrote 2 episodes of a show called Picket Fences, also
Mm.
created by David Kelly,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we did a Law& and Order. Then we did a original feature, and then Eric and I, we thought we were very clever. We wrote a pilot about the senior staff of the White House, and the,
They've never
like,
done a
day
show
we
like
fin
that before.
right?
No.
Well, the day we finished the script, they announced The West Wing.
Oh my god.
And we're like, "Okay, well, that was a big waste of time." And then Eric, graduated and had to go off and find a job, as people who
Mm.
graduate college do. So we started writing separately, and I didn't actually write too many specs. I was writing a lot of, original features, because my
Oh, really?
manager yeah, because my manager, believe it or not, was like, she would ask me a lot about my dating life, and such as it was. And, she'd ask me a lot about my dating life, and I would sort of tell her stories about various bad dates I went on, and she's like, "You really should write a romantic comedy." I'm like, "I don't know if I can do that." She's like, "No, you would, the way you tell stories about your love life, again, such as it is, you would do a really good romantic comedy." And I sure enough, I wrote this romantic comedy that actually, like, sort of put me on the map. It gave me the confidence that there were people out in Los Angeles who were interested in my writing. So I wrote that. I wrote, like, another spec romantic comedy. I wrote a spec Star Trek Voyager, though.
Oh.
That
Oh,
was a
okay.
lot of fun. The spec that broke me into the business was a spec West Wing, during the first season of that show.
Mhm.
Then I did, because I needed a writing sample coming out of the practice, I did essentially a spec practice because I didn't really have any material that I thought worked well together. So, but mostly it was a lot of original features.
So, I am very curious though because, you have written on a lot of law-focused television, in the
Yes.
past. The Practice, Dragnet, Law of course, Law& and Order, CSI, and Justice, I could go on. Um,
Oh.
Everyone loves to talk about how accurate law television is. Uh, as someone who
Is it
actually
is it accurate?
no, I mean, Suits, right? Suits
Oh,
has
okay.
gotta be
I'm
the
like,
most accurate show of all time. No, but I'd be curious as someone who actually was a litigator, who spent time in courtrooms, studied the law, uh, was it ever frustrating being in writers' rooms to have to, like, say, "That's not how it works," or did folks actually try to stay pretty close to the book?
it's a good question. I Yeah, first of all, it was never frustrating because I think everyone sort of in the room, including the lawyers among us, recognize that it's not a documentary.
Yeah.
It is fiction. And the truth is, anyone who's actually been in a courtroom or been in a trial or in a deposition knows that no one's going to make a TV show out of this. It is not the way it is portrayed in real life.
I've had jury duty, I know.
I think any attorney turned writer worth their salt knows that a huge amount of artistic license has to
Yeah.
be taken. I always said, like, my artistic license is new and laminated.
Yeah.
Like, I would always make use of it.
The Wire always struck me as probably the most realistic show on both
Yes.
sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
The
I love The
The
Wire.
Wire.
Love The
Another
Wire.
one I've heard, is Better Call Saul. A lot of people say Better Call Saul is, like,
Yeah,
is pretty accurate.
it
I
it
mean,
is.
is there might
It
not be a single trial in Better Call
Yeah.
Saul. I think everything is
Yeah.
plea bargains.
there's a lot of motion practice in Better Call Saul, though they did have the trial where Jimmy, tried to get his law license back and
Yeah.
cross-examined his brother and everything. I will say this, like, it's there's I think you sort of very quickly get a sense when you're writing these law shows as to what you can take license with and what you
Yeah.
can't. Like, there is
Mm.
like trials are conducted in a very specific way, particularly criminal trials, which make up the bulk of television. And it's like, no, the prosecution has to present their case first. There has to be cross
Mhm.
examination. There are, a lot of times, like, I would say, Law and Order actually really got a lot of the law right. Like, when we cited cases on the show, those were real
Yeah.
cases. Real. They were talking about real precedent. And it's just sexied up and it's sped
Yeah.
up. It's the speeding up of the process more than anything that I think is the
I
biggest
was gonna
license.
say every case and, gets solved within what, 2 weeks in a TV show?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's crazy. Well, it's also like, by the way, like when DNA results come
Yeah.
back, they come back in hours. It's like, no, that takes
Yeah.
weeks. It takes
We find
it
we
takes
find
weeks for the
fingerprints in 2 seconds. Yeah.
yeah, come on.
Yeah, they
Come
find
on. Yeah,
DNA like they're measuring for carpet in a
Oh my
living room.
gosh.
It just,
it's like
like it's that
it,
fast.
there's a lot of, but it's I don't know. I do know people who, like, get frustrated about this stuff, but they're the kind of people who, like, I think, don't like to be
Yeah.
entertained. I just think fundamentally there are people who watch television and movies who really do not want to be
Yeah.
entertained, and they're just going to find some reason to be upset. And I don't write for those people. I don't like to work with those people. It's just no fun.
Oh my god. Well, so it's the early 2000s, we've done all the law TV. Dark Knight has taken the world by storm. Man of Steel is out there, MCU is just kicking it off with Iron Man. And you just so happened to write the screenplay for Green Lantern. How did you make the jump from doing all of this television to breaking into the DCU?
Well, I did not do it alone. Basically, I was doing a pilot with Greg Berlanti,
Right.
who I've worked on a
Mhm.
bunch of things with,
Yes.
and we were kind of like treated like the ugly stepchild show of ABC. And Greg and I were flying back from a casting session in New York, and we're both kind of like feeling like, this is such a slog, and it's frustrating that we're doing this work that's not getting respect. And Greg's like, you know what? Kind of screw ABC. We're still gonna do the show if they pick it up, but I've got this idea for how to do a Green Lantern show. And he basically, like, over the cross-country flight, pitched me, the whole vision for Green Lantern, which really was, Lord of the Rings meets Star Wars meets a cop
I
show,
love it.
and I was like, I'm totally and you don't have to like, twist my arm. And we brought on Michael Green, who Greg and I had both worked with on Jack and
Mhm.
Bobby. Michael is like the most talented writer I'm personally friends with. Like he went on to do Logan and Blade Runner 2049 and you name it. Um, so the three of us basically like, wrote this and we spent it was a long process. We really like spent a long time trying to get that script right. And then very lucky thing happened. We turned in the first draft of the script to Warner Brothers the weekend Iron Man
Oh
premiered.
my god.
Oh, wow.
And
Was that on
it was like and
purpose?
no, it was totally accidental, completely
That's
accidental.
you're supposed to say, "Yes,
And
we planned this out."
I know we should have. I know there's a lot in the whole Green Lantern process. I wish we were smarter about. Um, and and basically like, and Greg was attached to direct,
Mm.
and we turned in this draft, and lo and behold, on Monday, Warner Brothers, who I don't think really took it very seriously, like it's three
Yeah.
TV writers, um, you know, but we're like, oh, this script's really good. Like we're gonna we didn't immediately say we're gonna make this, but they did start saying we're gonna start spending money on this. And we sort of have like a flashing green light, and Greg, sort of convened a whole sort of team of artists to do concept art and previs, and we were moving along. And then what happened next was actually very predictable, which is Warner Brothers did wake up one morning and was like, wait a second, wait a second. Um, we're going to spend $250 million on a screenplay written by three TV writers and directed by the director of the Broken Hearts Club. Like, no, and we're not doing that. Like, get real. And I'm like, okay, I can't really blame them. So they brought in Martin
Mhm.
Campbell, fresh off of Casino Royale, which again, fresh off of Casino Royale, it seemed like a good idea at the time, to direct. And they brought on Michael Goldenberg off of Harry Potter to sort of, be the
Mhm.
closer on the script. The thing that I like to say is that a very simple Google search will surface our
Yeah.
original draft, and the movie became what the movie became. You know.
We've got a video up on the channel right now, you know, defending the movie. Like we
Oh,
recognize it
wow.
wasn't perfect, but there is a lot about the movie to love.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was gonna say, like, Mark Strong as Sinestro is, like, one of the best super villain
Yeah.
That was
performances.
great
Yeah.
casting.
Perfect
Can I
Yeah.
casting.
can I tell you a story?
Yeah.
So, like, it's my first big Hollywood movie. I've seen it, by this point, so I know it's about to be my last. Um, and I'm like, I'm gonna spring for a limo, to go to the premiere. Like,
Oh
it's
yeah.
in Man's Chinese Theater, it's Hollywood Boulevard, so my wife and I, we go in the limo, and I get out on Hollywood Boulevard, and I get out, and people start chanting, "Mark, Mark," and I'm like, "Holy shit, this is the best thing ever. This is amazing." And I turn, and behind me, there's another limo, and Mark Strong had just gotten out.
Oh,
And I'm like
man.
I'm like, "That does make a little bit more
If
sense."
only they said Mark with a
Um,
K.
right. But it was like for 2 seconds there, I was like, I really felt very,
They were
very
cheering for
important.
you. Who's that guy? They were it was
The
absolutely
Yeah, who's
world's
Mark
a
great.
tu
Strong? Yeah.
Absolutely.
the world's
No,
a
there were
tuxedo and
things
you
that
wear
were
a pair
right.
of brown shoes.
There were things that were it's funny, I haven't gone back and looked at the movie again. I people do tell me it's aged pretty well, and I do look at, like, other superhero movies that have come out since, and I go, like, "You're giving me crap for Green Lantern? Look at that movie,"
Yeah.
I think all the ingredients were there. Maybe they just weren't cooked at the right temperature.
I'll tell you, when I read Michael Goldenberg's draft, I called up Greg, and my take on the draft was that Martin basically was doubling down on himself. Because all the work that we had done in terms of heart and humor and a certain groundedness were gone, from the draft, but could be restored in the performances and in the execution. So it really became like, "Okay, it's all up to Martin now."
That makes me wonder too because there's especially at that time, right? This was the first really cosmic superhero film, and there's always been this tug of war in superhero films and television shows between grounded realism and comic book apparatics, right? And
Yes.
how, as someone who works both in comic books and on, on the screen, how do you approach, like, balancing that tonal act?
I would say getting the tone right, at least on the page, was probably the thing that made writing the script as
Mhm.
difficult as it was, and it's the thing we took the most time with because it was both a tonal issue, but it was also sort of like a narrative structure issue of like, at what point do you go to Oa? Like, is the climax on Earth or is the climax in space?
Mhm.
We had two villains, so like we had Hector Hammond,
Right.
we had
Yeah.
we had what became Parallax, and, we were like, who does Hal defeat first?
Right.
There were a lot of questions like that, and we did a variety of different drafts past the first draft. It wasn't like we were immediately kicked off the movie. We tried a bunch of different things. My favorite bit from our original draft was it was two things. It was basically during the sequence where Abin Sur's ring is traveling the world looking for someone courageous, someone brave. It goes, to the offices of a major metropolitan newspaper, and it flies around this guy with glasses and then keeps moving on. But then, like, Michael Green wrote this great stage direction where, you're hearing Abin's voice going, "Find me someone courageous, someone brave," and the stage direction said, "It, approaches Washington, D.C. and continues on without
Yeah.
stopping."
Oh,
I don't know if that bit would
yeah,
have would have translated, into film, but, I always liked
that's
it.
great. That's
It sounds like a g I see it as a
Yeah.
comic
No,
panel,
I absolutely
the way you
Very much
see,
so.
described it.
like,
Yeah.
going over all of North America, honing in, and just
Yep. Yeah. Exactly, exactly. There was definitely some fun to be had, let's put it that way.
That's so fun. Well, then how does that then translate, right, to the Arrowverse? Because you partnered with Greg Berlanti on that
Yeah.
as well, and, I can't imagine when you guys first put together that pitch for that show that you had any inkling it was gonna turn into the massive television multiverse that it did.
Not only did we not have an inkling, we didn't wanna do the show. Like, we didn't. Like, so what happened was, um, Greg and I were both at ABC Studios. Um I forget who left first. I left and Greg left. I forget in which order, but Greg returned to Warner Brothers, where he had his first deal. And Peter Roth, the head of Warner Brothers Television, very, very enthusiastic, very passionate guy, had heard Greg over lunch tell him about his idea for a Green Arrow TV show. And Greg and I had been talking about it. Greg asked me if I wanted to do it with him, and I said yes. But then we started to go through the Green Lantern
Mhm.
process. Basically, like the summer, like 2 weeks after Green Lantern comes out and bombs and, sort of gets eviscerated by the critics, Pete's calling going, "Where's my Green Arrow show?" And Greg and I are looking at each other going like, "Do we really wanna do this again?" I mean, it's got green in the title too. Like, I mean, we're dumb, but we're not stupid. And we kinda said
Mhm.
no. And, Peter is very passionate, like I said, and he's very, he's a dog like a dog with a bone. And he kept calling. He even called me. I'm like, "What are you doing calling me? Like, I'm nobody." Like, and Greg, he basically got Greg and I to a point where Greg and I sat in his office on the Warner Brothers lot going, "Okay, if we were to do this, what would it have to look
Mhm.
like? Like, what would it have
Mhm.
to look like for our sanity, but also so that we don't run into the same creative problems that we ran into with Green Lantern?" And basically what we did was we sort of made them not an offer that they couldn't refuse, but an offer that they should have refused, where we said, "We're not doing this in the traditional way. We're not doing a story error. We're not doing an outline. We're not like you're not even going to do an article in Deadline Hollywood. Like this is going to be really simple. We're going to do two meetings. We're going to pitch to you, the studio, and then we're going to go across the street. We're going to pitch to the CW. And if you like it, we will write you a script. And if you off that script, no notes, no nothing, you will decide whether or not you're making the pilot."
Wow.
That does not happen.
No.
It really does not. Back when I was a lawyer, 99% of cases settle, and I was always negotiating settlements. And I always said to my clients, if you're willing to walk away from the table, I can get you a better settlement. There's no leverage like the ability to say no.
Mhm.
And because Greg and I were so not interested in just having another bad experience, certainly having another bad experience with a DC comic book character, it really drove a lot of our thinking. So as a result, we ended up doing something that was very, very, very true to our vision. And I think honestly the show was better because of it.
I have 2 hot questions real quick. Is your favorite color green?
My favorite color is not green.
Uh,
It's
Ah,
not. No, it's not. It's not. Yeah.
and if you had to pick between Green Lantern or Green Arrow, who's your favorite superhero?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question.
Has no one ever asked you that?
No one's ever asked me that.
That's crazy.
that's a ScreenCrush
Gosh.
crossover universe exclusive coming up right
Yeah,
now,
baby.
baby. Let's go.
I'd probably Green Arrow just because I've spent
Mm,
so much friggin' time
yeah.
with him.
And
But
help define the character. I mean, for a lot of people, their perception of Green Arrow is your Green Arrow.
it's weird. It's very weird. We'd actually like for the last season, we had done like a Photoshop test of Steven with a goatee. And I thought it looked terrific actually. I still
Yeah.
have it like I'm always
I just wanna give him the little Robin Hood cap, like,
no, the
that's
Robin
he
Hood
never.
cap would never happen. We would never
I
let
know,
that happen.
I know.
We would never let that happen. We were all about longbow hunters and the hood.
Ah, I love that. I have an autographed copy of that by Mike Grell.
The very first time Greg mentioned Green Arrow TV show to me, I the you know, and the whole concept of the island and flashbacks was Greg's part of Greg's
Yeah.
idea from the beginning. I'm like, very first 2 comics we have to reread are Longbow Hunters and Green Arrow Year One.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
Can I
so
ask real
oh,
quick?
go ahead.
Did your experience on Green Lantern have anything to do with dropping Green from the title of Arrow, or was that just to keep him grounded and realistic in
No,
that first season?
it was definitely it was definitely related. It was
Yeah.
absolutely related. I mean, we were like originally the original working title was The Hunter.
Oh,
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
okay. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, we were originally like, how do we, how do we, yes, grounded, but also distinguish it from, our, our Green Lantern experience. I think we had
Yeah.
PTSD with respect to the word green.
Got it.
Understandable. So you're going in, to Warner Brothers, you're pitching flat out, this is our show, this is our script, pick it up or no. Obviously, they said yes. I mean, we're where we are today. Oliver Queen's arc is so layered in that
Oh,
show.
thank you.
It's all about legacy, guilt, leadership, redemption, all of the above, probably more. How much of his journey was mapped out for you guys from the very beginning versus did it start evolving based on Steven's performance or, like, audience reception?
I would say kind of all of the above. Like, so the way Greg and I like to work is the way I like to describe it is it's kind of the way I like to go to Europe. I like to have my museum tickets and I like to have my dinner reservations and maybe a guide or 2 booked. But at the same time, if I hear about this amazing gallery or something, I want to go and check it out. So we always go into, we went into the series and we went into each season with very specific plans for Oliver's arc and his journey of redemption. But, you know, when you're doing 23 episodes a year in particular, you really are reacting to, what you're seeing on the screen and in dailies and everything.
Yeah.
For us at the beginning, when we were talking about Oliver's arc, it was, it was really heavily influenced, believe it or not, by Brody's storyline, Damian Lewis's
Interesting.
storyline in Homeland. We really
Oh,
wanted to
okay.
play the idea of this guy, the survivor of something terrible, that comes back with PTSD. And then we had like we knew there were certain things that we were gonna sort of do in terms of evolving him. The idea of him becoming a leader of heroes actually came pretty late in the process, I would say. Um, and that really was in large part because of Steven's performance.
Mhm.
And sort of like seeing like, oh, you can sort of see him, ordering other heroes around really.
Yeah.
But and then there were other things. I always say like, I went into the show with my deck of cards. Like I was like, oh, I want to do this and I want to do this and I want to do this. And I didn't necessarily know what order I wanted to do them in.
Yeah.
But like I knew it was time for me to step off the show when I'm like, I was down to my last card and my last card was kill Oliver.
Mhm.
And this was the end of season 6. I'm like, "Oh, that's too soon."
Yeah.
Because my penultimate card was expose Oliver's secret
Mhm.
to the world.
Mhm.
And that was stuff that was part like in my head and part of the show from day one.
So I have to imagine too, there are characters like Felicity Smoke
That total
that sh
surprise.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, like, she was just kind of a cameo in that first
Yeah.
episode, but I feel like, I mean,
Emily Rickards.
her performance is so charismatic, she's so captivating, like, immediately became a fan favorite from Go.
That character's so funny because, I always joke to Greg, we create a show that we couldn't write. And by that I mean, Greg and I were very like we are kind of romantic comedy writers. That's both of us got our start writing romantic comedies really, and we're very like quippy, Sorkin-y,
Mhm.
very sort of like screwball romantic comedy type of writers, and we wrote the darkest, most taciturn, silent guy ever. So when we needed a character just to like do an IT thing in episode 3, it was like, oh, finally, the character we know how to write.
Yeah.
And then I remember vividly because Emily's Canadian and she didn't come into audition in Los Angeles. She went on tape in Vancouver, and I remember watching her audition, and I ran into Andrew Kreisberg's office saying, "You have to watch this audition. You have to see this actress." And it was it was a revelation. And then when the network started seeing the dailies with Emily, they were like, "Can we see more of her?" And we're like,
Yeah.
"We're way ahead of you. We're already breaking episodes 4 and 5 with her
Amazing.
in it." Like, yeah, it wasn't even a question for us.
Wow.
And
That's
and
so
we
cool.
we realized, like, that was the flavor the stew needed,
Yeah.
Like, I always say, like, when I did Flash Forward, I realized too late in the run that we didn't have a Hurley character, like, you
Mhm.
need a character if you're gonna do dark stuff, you gotta have one comic relief character, and originally, that was supposed to be Tommy, but it it never quite, it never quite manifested. It never
Yeah.
quite worked. I don't think we were writing the right stuff for Colin Donnell, who played Tommy, so thank God for Emily. Like, thank God that happened.
It's funny you say that it was such a dark show, but some of the things that stand out to me the most in Arrow, apart from the fight scenes, which are a
Oh,
whole
okay.
other, they're amazing. There's a line that Captain Lance has in a later season. It's when Damien Dark is like taking over the city and all this stuff, and all this stuff's happening at once. And Lance goes, "Yeah, I mean, what is it, May already? Because it's the end of the season." So,
Yeah.
like,
We
yeah, it must be
well,
May, right? Like, I
we
loved that
thank you.
line. I've put that in
Thank
videos
you.
as a cutaway.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, we definitely like, it's fine. I grew up with like, I always say like, Empire Strikes Back is a huge, huge, huge influence on me because I always say it's the darkest Star Wars, but it's also the funniest Star Wars.
Mhm.
And it was a real object lesson for 10-year-old me going like, oh, it's more dramatic if there's some levity, and the levity is funnier if it's dramatic.
Mhm.
Just that combination has, like, I think you can almost pretty much describe my entire voice as a writer based on, what I call the Empire Strikes Back paradox.
I love that. Well, speaking of some dark television, the Deathstroke arc in season 2
Ooh,
is still held up, in my opinion, as some of the best comic book television
Oh,
TV arcs ever.
thank you. Thank
How
you.
how did that come together, and why do you think, like, Slade Wilson made for the perfect opponent, for Oliver Queen?
Well, it's funny. So originally, there was no plans for Deathstroke. And we were in prep on the pilot, and David Nutter, who directed the pilot, who's like basically David Nutter's the Steven Spielberg of television. He's like directed 19 pilots and 18 have gone to series, many of them huge series. He directed the Red Wedding episode of Game of Thrones. And, David's brilliant, and basically was sort of taking us through this shot, basically the opening shot of what turned out to be the opening shot of the pilot of sort of panning across Lian Yu. And he's like, I really would love like some sort of totem, some sort of something right here in the foreground. And actually it was Jeff Johns who said it could be the Deathstroke's mask. And we're like, it can? We can do that?
that's cool.
So it really started out with it really started out with like just an Easter egg,
Uh-huh.
and then it was like, well, can we have that, that mask in the flashbacks? Sure. Oh, okay. Well, we got
Sure.
that character. can we actually introduce Slade Wilson in the flashbacks? And it was like, yeah, so it was like these little baby steps. But I think fundamentally the reason why Slade works so well as an antagonist for Oliver was really two things. First of all, Bennett's performance, absolutely outstanding, totally embodied the character, all props to him for making that work the way it did. But I also think it was the fact that this was a villain who came from Oliver's past, who was on the island with him, who, was motivated by this, sense of jealousy and betrayal. Um, so he was just this very visceral villain, as opposed to, pretty much all the other villains we had were all villains that sort of come into the story and sort of are fighting with Oliver as Oliver's already a hero. But I think for Slade to have developed this animosity and this antagonism with Oliver as Oliver was becoming a protagonist, I feel like that was like the special sauce that you couldn't replicate.
So we're about a third the way through season 2, and there's a scientist character that pops up.
Yes.
Everyone's favorite Barry Allen, right? At what point in Arrow season 1, season 2 did Warner Brothers come to you, or did you guys go to Warner Brothers and be like, "Hey, what if we did another show?"
That I think it was like towards the end of season 1, Greg said to, Mark Pedowitz, the president of CW, "I'd really like to do The Flash next." And, Mark was all in on it. I was actually not involved with The Flash. Believe it or not, Michael Green and I, working with Greg, had done a feature film version of The Flash,
Wow.
that, did not it didn't go forward, I think in large part because Green Lantern turned out to be what it turned out to be. Yeah, we did a whole sort of take on The Flash, which is not dissimilar to what they ended up doing on the show, but I wasn't involved. I was working on Arrow season 2.
Well, from there, right, Flash season 1 happens during Arrow season 3, and then eventually they do the first ever on television
Yes.
comic book crossover event.
Yes.
How did that happen?
So, well, basically, okay, so this I can take some responsibility for just because I got very involved in the crossovers because I love the idea of them so much. And believe it or not, the reason I love them so much, this was something that Greg and it really came about because Greg was like, I want to do it.
Yeah.
But the reason Greg wanted to do it was he and I both love the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman. And
Yeah.
but Greg and we sort of joke, really share a childhood, and the highlights of those shows were the crossovers.
Mhm.
And we were like, we've got an opportunity to,
Yeah.
do
Mhm.
$6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman, crossovers in television. So I was just so into it. Like I was it scratched all my itches. It also scratched my itch as a producer because producing those crossovers was such an interesting challenge.
Mhm.
It presented like a scheduling challenge, logistical challenge, especially in the early days when we'd never done it before.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the puzzle of it.
I was gonna say, did the shows shoot their seasons at the same time, or did you have to
Yes.
yeah. Oh,
And
so
on
We
the
should
same
we
on the same lot as well?
yeah.
Yes, actually, well, Flash and Arrow shot on the same lot.
Yeah.
The subsequent shows shot on different lots, in Vancouver.
Wow, that must have been incredibly hard
Yeah,
to
especially
coordinate when it came time
Crisis
for
and
Crisis
yeah.
and yeah, both
Well, the
Crisis.
thing is we kept each year we increased the degree of difficulty.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really did.
Each year we learned something new. Like we learned, for example, like, oh, we need some down days built in to the various shows so that there can be proper crossing over of people. When we first did it, we were trying to make, the Flash episode of the crossover and the Arrow episode of the crossover work at the same time. And it was like the scheduling was just insane. In fact, like
I can only imagine.
I think it's the end of the first act of the Flash, the Arrow Hour. We were having really trouble. We were shooting at Star Labs, which was going to be a location, and the act out is, the Flash speeds in and catches these boomerangs that Captain Boomerang throws, and it was like the outlier. It was like the one friggin' scene we could not like schedule Grant for, and we needed Grant because the whole point
Mhm.
is it's Grant. Um, and it was really tough because it was on location. We were like, "Okay, do we, like, build a set, on the sound stages somewhere, and that way we don't have to travel Grant and everything. And then just I was in the middle of a meeting and we were banging our heads against the wall about it. I'm like, wait a second. Like, if you look at the script, it's basically 2 shots. It's the Flash speeding in, which we know is gonna be a digi double anyway,
Yeah.
and then it's Grant, the reveal of Grant. I'm like, "Why can't we just get a plate at the location and do the reveal of Grant against the green screen,
Mhm.
and
And
it
then
looks
paste
like
it
Grant is
in.
on the location?"
Yeah.
And it's like, like, coming up with solutions like that is the whole for me, like, that was the fun part of the crossovers. Like, "Okay, how do we do this? How do we make this happen?"
Especially when you're the one
And
writing it, it makes it easier to produce it as well.
well, it does, but you know what's funny? I think the reason the shows looked the way they did and were the way they were was we always wrote without an eye towards production.
Mhm.
The
Hmm.
way I sort of show run is I always say the the first draft will always come out on the first day of prep and it will be unproducible. But the shooting script 8 days later will absolutely be
Yeah.
producible. And it's sort of like the way I sort of describe it is it's you have to do it like a car, like in a car compactor. Like it's gonna get
Mm.
smaller in the compactor, but it's still gonna weigh as much as the car. But you have to start out with a car in order to accomplish that. So there were a lot of times where you're just sort of cursing past you. Like,
Yeah.
why did I write that? Why did I do that? That's so stupid.
Well, that doesn't
But
change the more you write. Yeah.
it really doesn't. It really, really doesn't. I think all you can ever sort of hope for is, I think with experience comes a certain amount of calm.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it's not working now. It's not going to be working next week. At some point, it will start working.
Yeah.
So I don't panic about story the way I used to, or panic about production
Yeah.
the way I used to, because I know it by hook or by crook, it gets figured out.
Across gosh, what was it? Arrow was, what, to 2020, like, all the Arrowverse and
Yeah,
everything, right?
2020. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, between that, Flash, the crossover, Legends of Tomorrow, Crisis and both
The
Crises,
the
like,
multiverse shows, Black Lightning, Batwoman, yeah.
was there a character that you didn't get to touch that you really wanted to?
And by the way, this wasn't DC's fault. This one was totally mine. I always thought the question would be absolutely perfect for Arrow.
Oh, that
Like,
would've been
such a no-brainer.
cool.
And
Yeah, that would've been great.
it's funny. It's like even when you're doing 8 seasons, we never found its time and never found its moment.
Well, and then she popped up in Gotham.
Yes, yes, that's true. That's true. And that did sort of diminish our chances of using,
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and because it was always a negotiation and stuff. But I will say, like, DC was always really, really great. They let us use far more characters than we ever expected
Yeah.
in a million years. People often ask me, like, which characters do you regret not being able to use? I'm like, I don't have any real regrets in
Mm.
the sense that, like, our glass is more than half full.
Yeah.
Our cup
You
runneth
basically
over.
played with the entire, like,
We
street
by the end,
level
we pretty much
roster.
did.
You
Yeah.
Yeah.
know, but that's what really when I watched, all those shows through, as an old school, like, Silver Age, Bronze Age DC Comics reader, I never thought I would see Rip Hunter or Vandal Savage
Me
or
neither.
Stargirl. I
Yeah.
mean, that to me did you have a background in comics? Like, did you grow up reading them, or did you just
Oh,
fall
yeah. Oh
ass
my god.
backwards
I
into
This
reading
was
that?
this guy's a comics
no,
nerd,
no,
yeah.
yeah. I like one of my earliest memories is, like, flipping through a Superman comic book on the floor of my bedroom at home, and, my mother comes in, and I couldn't read at that point. She thought she raised a savant, and, I'm like, "No, I'm just looking at the pictures. I don't even know where I got the comic book from." So
Mhm.
I'm such a comic book guy.
So if you ever get a
You know?
time machine in your life, make sure that you travel back in time and give your young self that comic, because it may have been you
It
who
may
gave it
have
to
been it
yourself.
may have been
That
you.
would be that would really make so much sense.
Well,
I will say, like, I always
Legend
say, like, I work for
Tell Legends of
10-year-old me.
Tomorrow was my favorite show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, Legends was a lot of fun, and it was a great antidote. Like, when I was co-running both shows at the same time, it was like I'd spend like a week rewriting like Arrow, and it's dark and dreary, and everything takes place at night, and then Legends was this nice little moose bouche, that sort of restores my faith in humanity a little bit.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun to work on. A lot of fun.
If between okay, so between both universes, you have Arrow and you have Legends. Which character are you the sidekick for?
Ooh, good question. Character am I the sidekick for?
We won't give you the responsibility of being a hero because no one wants that, but
Yeah, yeah. I
you could be the
I
man
feel
in the
like
chair for anyone you want.
yeah, I kinda feel like I wanna be the man in the chair for Diggle.
Okay.
Um,
That's good. I like that.
I just
Pre ring or post ring.
well, the ring was, always a negotiation and
I
some
bet. Yeah.
cajoling and some arm twisting and some getting in trouble. But,
Oh,
we actually, like, had, for season 8, we gave, Diggle's costume a redesign. We gave it a green color, but it also in the original designs, it had, like, basically the lantern glyph,
Mm.
and DC was like, "No, you can't do that."
aw.
So, it was always like, again, a little dance.
Were you able to sneak into anything that DC didn't know about?
Oh, yeah, there's a couple things well, eventually the problem is these things show up on national television, so eventually they find out, but,
Yeah, but by then it's
there
done.
let's put it this way, there were a couple of Easter eggs that were fell into the easier to get forgiveness than beg for permission category. The, fighter pilot bomber jacket guy in Coast City and the, season 4 flashbacks that
Mhm.
has the name Jordan on it.
Yep.
That was one of them. A
Mm.
big one was when the Legends of Tomorrow brought Helen of Troy to a island full of
Yep.
Amazonian type women.
Mhm.
What is
That was
that? What is that a reference to?
well we clarified it by actually chironing on the screen Themyscira.
Amazing.
Oh, okay.
I was actually I was the one who made the final call to do that. Sorry DC, no, it was me. But I was like reviewing visual effect shots,
Yeah.
and the shot of Themyscira was a visual effect shot, and someone said like, "It's a shame we can't just, Chiron Themyscira here." And I'm like,
Why not?
"Well, I knew why not, but I'm like, let's do it anyway."
Ask for forgiveness,
You
not
know
permission, you know?
Exactly. Then there was like in Elseworlds when John Wesley Shipp's Flash sees Diggle. Actually, David Ramsey come to me and said, "Can we do some? Can we? We've got this opportunity with this this other Flash. Can we do something about Diggle in the ring?" And I'm like, "Okay, let me see." Let me see. I don't know. And then I came up with, John, why aren't you wearing your ring? And I got a phone call. I got a little slap on the wrist phone call for that one. But all worth it. All worth
Oh,
it.
man.
Hey, Heather, I want to ask one
Yeah,
of James's questions, if that's
absolutely.
okay.
Yeah,
Well,
jump
I
in.
got it. So, Mark, one of our editor for the podcast, James Somerville. Hi, James. How are you? You can find James's social links below. Sent a litany of questions. There's
Okay.
one I want to make sure I
Yeah.
get to, though. In the Crisis on Earth X crossover, the Green Arrow of Earth 1 had a kryptonite arrow, and he told Supergirl from Earth 38 he had it in case an evil you ever showed up. Where did he get the kryptonite arrow?
Great question. Great question. You know, we did have an answer for it. Like, we knew that people were gonna ask that question, and even though we didn't, like, plan on explicating it in the episodes, we did have an answer, and it was so long ago, I'm trying to remember what it was. It might have been hmm, I don't remember. I don't
Um,
remember. Gosh,
If you
it'll
do, let
come
us
maybe if it
know.
comes to me.
But I just want to say
Love it.
how impressed I am that you did think it through that far, even though it wasn't going to be in the episode. Because I mean, I've talked to a lot of Star Trek people, Heather, I know you have too. And when they come up with this thing or the gobbledygook, like
they
26
they
episodes,
need
just got to
to
get it out.
know.
They're not thinking of, yeah,
Yeah, they need to know.
they're not always
Yeah.
thinking about what fits into memory alpha.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
Well,
Thank you
the
for that.
unit
Thank you
is
for the attempt.
I think, we sort of realized that our fans were very involved and very observant and very active on the internet. And we were like, we should always have an answer for something,
Yeah. Yeah.
even if it doesn't make the screen, because, you know, uh, y- it's funny. Like, I'm working on an animated show right now, and there's a couple of things. They're more like logic things, like where I'm like, there's never gonna be an opportunity to actually dramatize this or get this dialogue out without seeming nakedly expositional, but as long as we have an answer for it, I feel like, we've done our job.
Very cool. Well, before we get to hear me out, I do want to jump into the actual world of comic books. You don't just adapt
Okay.
them for the TV. You also write write the books themselves. Everything from you've done work on Spider-Man, X-Men, Wolverine, Star Wars, Blade, Planet of the Apes. There's a saying in the world of comic writers that I think you can speak to both as someone who writes for comics and TV, that comics is so freeing because there is no budget. There's no producer saying, no,
Mm.
we can't do that because we can't have 1,000 extras, or we can't go to space, or we ran out of the CG budget. And your experience has working in comics, has it had an elevated sense of creative freedom that you don't get in TV?
I mean, certainly, yes. Like, it's less freedom and more like, I don't have to worry
Yeah.
about it. Like, I don't have to worry about how I'm gonna produce
Yeah.
this. Um, you know, so that's kind of nice. I have other sort of things that, like, I worry about, like, I worry a lot. I don't worry about budget, obviously, with a comic book, but I do worry about the fact that I have to ask another
To
human being to
draw
draw this stuff.
it.
And
Yeah.
and I'm always sort of very cognizant that, I don't wanna be that jerk who goes, you know, 1,000 people storm the castle in panel
Yeah.
1. It's I actually, it's funny, like, I just finished a book, an issue of Spider-Man and Wolverine, and, like, Spider-Man's down, like, in a subway tunnel, and there's a whole bunch of these characters that are coming at him, and I'm like, "Look, it's a double page spread. Uh, Draw as many as you can." I will say, without driving yourself crazy, but I will say, like, the coolness of this issue is directly proportional to how many of these
Yeah.
characters we can see in this spread.
Mhm.
So, I just try to, like, be very honest with
Yeah.
the artist and be like, "I'm respectful of your time, I'm respectful of your energy. If you can't make this work, we'll figure out another
Yeah.
way." But that's there's just, you're trading one set of
Yeah.
limitations for another.
But also no pressure, right? No pressure for that artist.
No,
No
well,
pressure at all.
I try always not to be, like I said, a jerk, and when the story does call for it or requires me to be one, I always apologize.
So you got to be a part of one of the biggest, most recent Spider-Man series, Brand New Day.
Yeah.
What were you gonna do?
Very defining, arc for Peter. Can you tell us a little bit about, like, how that came to happen? I mean, that's partnering with Dan Slott, who's the most prolific Spider-Man writer of all time. Steve McNiven
Yes.
was drawing on that, who's just an insanely credible and kind artist.
Yes.
Salvador LaRocca.
Totally.
Like, I mean, what was that like, getting to write probably, next to Batman and Superman, the most famous superhero?
It was a total dream. I had signed an exclusive with Marvel, and as part of the exclusive, they invited me to be, part of what we were calling ourselves the Webheads or the Spidey Brain Trust or something. And the idea was, instead of publishing Amazing Spider-Man and Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, and at the time Web of Spider-Man and Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, they were just going to publish
Mhm.
Amazing. And they were going to publish it 3 times a week. 3 times a month.
3
Sorry,
times a
3 times a
week,
week.
oh my
Terrible.
god.
Wow.
Can you imagine? Like, that's like every editor going,
I did a weekly
um,
comic 3 times a week, like, Jesus.
that would be, yeah, it's not possible. So 3 times a month. And the idea was like that they would assemble a team of writers to sort of operate kind of like a TV writing staff. I'm like,
Mm.
this is amazing. And we all knew that we were going to be coming in um, off of the end of the Peter Mary Jane marriage.
Uh,
But we didn't know how they were undoing the marriage.
yeah.
And we all arrived for our first summit, and Joe Quesada, the editor in chief at the time, took us through what became One More Day.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, we were all like sitting there looking at each other going, "Oh my God, that buzzsaw that we're literally running into looks really sharp." But then we got over that, and we just sort of embraced you know, we really, it really was a brand new day for us. Like, we were embracing all the stuff that could feel new, but also some things from, past comics that we wanted to go back to,
Mhm.
the idea of Peter being single and dating
Yeah.
and the Parker luck and all that stuff. We just really embraced it. And it was just a period of incredible, just creative fuel and creative, excitement. As we also sort of navigated the idea of doing a 3 times a month book,
Yeah.
with like this. I don't think it really had been done before,
No.
certainly not at Marvel. And we were sort of building the plane in the air.
Yeah.
And it was an incredible amount of fun. All those guys are amazing. Bob Gale, Zeb Wells,
Yeah.
Dan, obviously, Joe Kelly came on board, Mark Wade came on board, and it was just the best group of guys.
Has a murderer's row
Yeah.
of comic
Yeah.
book writers. That's insane. What a cool writers room to work in.
It's a great writer's room. Oh my god,
Yeah.
like, you're just sort of sitting there going like, "I'm not smart enough to roll with these people."
Well, and to
You
essentially
learn a lot.
and, like, not that you, like, reset Peter's continuity, but in a way, I mean, Harry was alive again, like
Yeah, yeah.
I forgot Harry came back with that. That's
yeah, this
right.
was this was when, like, Harry came
Yeah.
alive, Peter's back living with Aunt
Yep.
May, like, it truly was a
Brand new day.
brand new
Yeah,
day. Yeah.
yeah.
I thought the best thing that came out of that story was him dating again, because as soon as Peter
Yeah.
Parker, this kind of eternal, like you said, Parker luck, as soon as he married a supermodel, you lost a little something. It was different challenges for him, but I really enjoyed, because I knew they could always go back if they
By the
wanted
way,
2 years later. So I
spoken like someone who has no regard for their Twitter timeline. Um,
Oh, no, sir, I'm only on X. I don't follow
oh,
Twitter.
oh, okay, fair enough, fair
Yeah.
enough.
Well, but one thing you learn in comics is, like, don't worry about it. Like, there's
Yeah,
either, like, Captain America saying, "Hail Hydra," don't worry about it, there's a reason for it, or if it then they'll fix it later. It's very rare in comics to ever see somebody who got completely
Yep.
character assassinated by one decision a writer made.
that
Yep.
that's exactly it. It's this unbelievably long running narrative, where everything happens and everything gets undone, and then it happens again, but in a different way. And yeah, just chill out a little bit.
Hank
Just
Pym.
just relax. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Hank Pym was changed forever.
he was. I
Yep.
mean, those are rare. Yeah, those are very rare. I mean, there's very, very, very few things that, like, it's funny, like Hank Pym, Captain Marvel dying. But there was a time when, for the longest time, Bucky, coming back was inviolate.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
so I think, everything is always just waiting for just a
Yep.
better story or another story.
Just the next
Yeah.
story, yeah. I'll never forget, what was it, when Doc Ock was
Oh,
Spider-Man
so
for,
good.
2 years,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
and gosh, the outrage, but it's one of the best arcs of Spider-Man that is out there.
If you think about it, and I've gotten in trouble for saying this in the past, so clearly I'm gonna say it again because I can't help myself. Like, so when we were doing Brand New Day, gay marriage wasn't legal yet. And
Mm.
the rationale for why it shouldn't be legal is, that, well, gay couples have civil unions. And a civil union is just as good as a marriage. So what's the problem, right? And there are all the people who are like complaining, well, Peter and Mary Jane are no longer married. I'm like, well, basically, fundamentally, what we did, they still dated, they still lived together, they still everything.
Mhm.
We downgraded their marriage from a marriage to a civil union. And if
Huh,
you don't
interesting.
see that that's a downgrade, then, you know,
I love that.
thank you. But I've gotten so much trouble for it, so much trouble for it.
Oh, that's so good.
But that's fundamentally what we did, or I really
Oh,
should
man.
say what Joe and Joe did. We had nothing to do with it. We just inherited it. Please don't at me.
Well, before we get to hear me out, I do wanna ask, you've had the pleasure of getting to play in so many different
Yeah.
universes, in television, in film, in comics, video games, is there one IP, is there one character that you've not yet got to touch that, for all the Hollywood producers or comic book editors that are watching this right now, listening to this,
Um,
like, who's the one?
well, the only one I haven't got, well, there's touching and there's like doing like a run on.
Yeah.
But if we're just talking touching, then I have to say Indiana Jones.
Mhm. Mhm.
Indy's the white whale, the one that
Same.
has sort of gotten away. But I do have an idea for a Indiana Jones adjacent television show that I think could be really cool.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I'll just pitch it now because it's never gonna happen.
This is your
Ravenwood.
hear me out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is my hear me out. Okay. It's
Okay, here you're gonna start the hear me
okay.
out. Mark, go.
Ravenwood, The Adventures of Abner Ravenwood,
That's great.
and
Oh,
his young
I
daughter
would
Marion.
watch
Right?
that.
Yeah, that would be
Right?
awesome.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
it
love
could be
that.
really cool. So that's my hear me out.
That would be so cool. That would be
It'd be
so
cool,
cool
so
because
cool.
it's additive, but it doesn't it's not gonna affect
Yeah.
anything that's
Yes,
pre-established,
exactly. It's nice and
and
clean.
Depending on how
it's
young
nice and
Marion is when she meets Indy.
right. Well, and I love that it would be an even earlier
Yes,
period than we've
that's
got
right.
to explore
Yeah.
in that universe thus
Exactly.
far. I think, the more modern the indie goes, the less it works.
I
And
totally agree. And I think, by the way, the,
yeah.
the pilot is him getting his hands on the staff of Ra, the medallion of the
Ah,
Oh,
staff of Ra.
that'd be awesome.
That's
Yeah.
the first episode.
so
Yeah.
good. So
Thank
good.
you.
Well, I greenlight it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
done.
So
It's
Thank you.
happening.
Well,
Yeah.
Heather, I know there's a better than even chance that one day you'll be in a position to do that.
You and Ryan tell me that all the
Oh,
time.
I'm always saying, look, if you studios need somebody to run your shit, I got a continuity expert right here.
It's more than that. It's like, I mean, it's the way she works with talent. It's
Oh, I know.
how far ahead thinks and how strategically she thinks and creatively.
Oh
That's
God.
all that.
And yeah, as long as we're complimenting you, Heather. One thing I always love about not just working with you here, but on ScreenCrush, is your just intrinsic understanding of story. And a lot of us will see a story who aren't professional writers like you guys. We'll see a story and go, something about that didn't work, but you'll know it. And you'll be
Yeah.
able to pinpoint that. Our acolyte discussions and Book of Boba Fett discussions. You're the one. You were the one who kept playing. Why does he want to do crime? Why have they not told us in the first episode why he want to do crime now? So yeah, it's great working with you. And I'm stalling
Well,
because I don't have a hear me out. Really, I can.
that's 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 okay. You don't have to have one this week because Mark had the best one, but I have one as well. And Mark, I want your expert opinion on
Okay,
this
I'm ready.
as an ex-litigator, as a lawyer. My hear me out is that the classic Disney animated film Little Mermaid is really about contract law,
Oh my God, that is so true. Yes, that's
right?
so true. Yes. Ariel makes a contract with Ursula. There is
She
consideration for the contract.
right.
It's that
There's
yes.
fine print. She
Yes.
doesn't re she signs it without
Yep.
reading. I think,
She's a
you
minor. The
know
contract should have been null and
Oh,
void.
I
you
know.
beat me. You
She's a
beat me to it.
minor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
yeah.
but undersea law works slightly differently.
I was gonna say, is there a court of Ursula? I
It,
mean,
it's
but one could also argue that the contract was made in bad faith because Ursula uses Ariel's voice to manipulate the deal.
that is true. I think the suit has to be filed in small claims court. Um
Hmm.
But who
I was gonna say,
oversees
is it
that?
a civil suit?
Is that Triton or is it like an octopus that plays the drums? What are the rules? We don't know how undersea law works. None of us are qualified to make this argument one way or the other.
That's a good point. It's a good point. But I feel like that should be the next Little Mermaid movie.
Is the
Yeah.
court dude,
Or a
that's the next
series. That is an
yes.
animated series no
Law
child would
Law and
watch.
Order?
Law and
What's
Order,
the
Law and
undersea
Order underwater.
And King
Law and Order Mediterranean or whatever yeah.
Yes.
Caribbean.
Pitch it,
Caribbean.
Mark.
We should totally do that.
Wait, are they in the Mediterranean in Little Mermaid? Do they
Yeah, I
ever
think it's the
establish what
Caribbean.
sea they're in?
I don't know that I think it's the
I think it's the
Caribbean.
Caribbean.
But
Yeah.
wait, for Prince Eric's castle, did they sail all the way back across the Atlantic Ocean?
No, it's colonizers, who knows? They built a castle.
Right. Yeah.
And on
Yeah.
that one, and on that note, I think that's a great place to end this, don't you, Heather?
I do. Before we say goodbye to everyone, Mark, can you please tell folks where they can find you as well as anything upcoming
Yes.
for July, August, and the rest of the year that folks should keep an eye on?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, you can find me on Blue Sky at Marc Guggenheim. You can find me on Instagram at Marc Guggenheim. I haven't been on Twitter since Election Day, and I'm actually going to delete my friggin' account. But I am also on Substack, where I publish a mostly weekly newsletter on Fridays called Legal Dispatch.
Highly recommend
Oh,
his newsletter.
thank
It
you.
is so
Well, thank
good.
you. I appreciate that. Thank
Yes.
you. And thanks for reading it.
I'm the one.
You are. In terms of, in terms of stuff coming up, I'm writing 2 ongoings for Marvel right now. One is called Star Wars Jedi Knights, based on, Jedi Knights. And the other is Spider-Man and Wolverine, which is a total craziness that Kari Andrews is drawing. And I also have a 30-page Justice League story,
Ooh.
Justice League Dark Tomorrow, which I wrote with Mark Wade, the illustrious Mark Wade, and is drawn by Cian Tormey. That's coming out like right before Comic-Con. And I want to say August, maybe later. At some point in the next couple of months, Marvel's publishing a omnibus of all my X-Men work.
No way.
That's
That's awesome.
Which
amazing.
I'm really excited by. Really excited. Like, thank
Congratulations.
you.
That's
Thank you. I'm
awesome.
That's
super
incredibly
psyched.
cool.
I'm super psyched. So yeah, good stuff coming. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff I can't talk about.
Of
Yeah.
course.
We'll
Of
cut. Then
course,
we
of
get to hear
course.
the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
I'm working on one thing. It's an animated show. I'm working on 2 animated shows right now that I would love to talk about, but there's one that I'm doing with my wife. It's the first thing that she and I are working on together. That I'm like, oh, can't we just leak this? Um, but
You
eventually we
can
find
tell
out.
You can
me.
come back on too. Like this
Yeah.
hopefully will not be the last time we get to speak.
Love that. Love that. Absolutely. It'll be fun.
Thank you so much. I cannot believe I got to speak to you. This has been so much fun.
No, thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Mark.
So this has been my co-host Heather Antos.
And this has been my co-host, Ryan Airy.
And let us know what we should have asked Mark down in the comments below, or at either of us on any of the social media sites we have linked below, or on our free to join Discord server, which is like the internet before it became awful. Thanks so much, guys, and smash that bell and subscribe for alerts and all that stuff. Talk to you later.